Hello, and thank you for watching this ag forecast for the Northeast. I'm Andrew Pritchard, Senior Meteorologist with Nutrien Ag Solutions. We'll check out the satellite picture here first thing on Tuesday morning. A couple dramatic features to be found, the first of which is Hurricane Teddy that continues to spin away across the Atlantic right now, moving northward. We'll pass east of Maine today, moving into Nova Scotia in the Canadian Maritimes as we, head through the next 24 to 48 hours. And we've got a bit of a frontal boundary that kind of extends back through the Caribbean, leading us back to Tropical Storm Beta, which made landfall in eastern Texas yesterday in the Gulf Coast. Now a tropical depression that will continue to make its way across the southern U.S. as we head through the next 24 to 48 hours. I'm smiling a little bit here because I don't know if you can hear the cricket that keeps chirping in the background here, but that kind of describes the weather pattern over the central U.S. from the Central Plains into the Northeast over the last 7 to 10 days and really over the next few days, as we've seen some pretty dry weather across the region. Now we've got cooler temperatures in the Northeast right now, temps in the 30s in many areas, if not the low to mid 40s across the Northeast. A couple sub-freezing areas here across parts of northern New Hampshire, Vermont, and maybe eastern Maine as well. Now here's the latest on Teddy from the National Hurricane Center. Again, well east of Maine, and will continue to curve off to the east as we head through the next 24 hours, but still maintaining hurricane status today and through much of the day today. Now again, here's the last 7 days of precipitation with a big dry corridor from the Central Plains through the Corn Belt into the Northeast region. We saw Sally bring heavy rain to parts of the southeast and the mid-Atlantic. We're now seeing Teddy doing the same thing. We're bringing additional heavy rain finally into the Pacific Northwest, an area that badly needs it. Of course, we want that in doses, though. We want to mitigate the fire risk and not exacerbate the mudslide risk in the freshly burned areas there. But again, crickets across the midsection of the country. As we look at the next 7 days, we are going to finally bring in some precipitation from the Great Lakes into the Northeast. We're going to see a pattern that features a developing ridge in the west, a trough in the east. We're going to be sending short waves from the Canadian Prairie through the Great Lakes, at times bringing some rainfall to this area. We're also going to see the Pacific jet stream coming in from the southwest. So this is a pattern that could feature some storms developing, some storm systems developing across the eastern third of the country from the mid-Atlantic into the Northeast, some nor'easter type storm systems as we transition into the end of September, the beginning of October. Now we are going to bring some warmth back into the Northeast as we head into the end of the week, into early next week, before another wave of cold air develops in the Canadian Prairie and surges down into the Great Lakes, the eastern U.S., and eventually the Northeast as we get into mid to late next week, riding a developing trough across the midsection of the country. Again, we've got a big strengthening trough, a big corridor of strong jet stream winds blasting across the Pacific through the Gulf of Alaska right now. That will be coming ashore in the Pacific Northwest as we head into the late part of this week. We've got Teddy and our little upper level wave here that is going through a pretty fascinating evolution across the Atlantic, and then strong jet stream winds racing across the Atlantic into Europe. In between that, we're kind of bunched up, stagnant, and disorganized across the Canadian-U.S. border. We are going to see a few waves beginning to move through, though, transitioning us into this new pattern as we exit September and move into early October. So here's the evolution. We're going to be watching a couple of waves. The first impulse makes its way through the Pacific Northwest into the Canadian Prairie as we get into Thursday of this week. We're going to see another piece come rotating around here. It's this one right here as we get into Sunday and Monday of this coming week. You see it come across British Columbia there, diving into the midsection of the country, and this is what helps dig, amplifying that big trough across the eastern half of the country. So here we get into October 1st. Now we've got this big trough across the midsection of the U.S. That would bring a lot of cool air down into the central U.S. and eventually the Northeast. Now again, this is not a pattern that's going to be featuring any significant rainfall across the midsection of the country over the next few days, but will allow for some precipitation across the eastern half of the country. As you can see these waves kind of digging and let's go ahead and pause it and step through time. What kind of happens here is, right now we've got Beta taking much of the Gulf moisture right now across the southern U.S. That'll eventually lift into the mid-Atlantic as we get into the weekend of this weekend, September 24th and 25th. We then move into this pattern where we're bringing cool, dry air out of the Canadian Prairie into the central U.S., and the only real feed of Gulf moisture is here from the southeast, kind of wrapping around the peninsula of Florida, and then interacting with these waves as they come in, digging across the eastern Corn Belt, and then lifting across the Northeast. So there's a good picture right there. where if I take the drawings off, we've got this frontal boundary kind of stretched across the northeast down into the central plains, and this would be where you would get that precipitation then. It's kind of squeezed up across the eastern half of the country. So in the short term, we could see some rainfall across parts of eastern Maine from Teddy, but that's going to be about it for precipitation across the northeast between now and Thursday afternoon. If we take it a little bit longer range here with the European model, we can find our next organized chance for some precipitation that arrives with a little wave that's going to be moving through. Not until we get to the other side of the weekend, perhaps even into early next week. This is right around Sunday and Monday. If I take it all the way back, we are quiet between now and then. Beta moves off to the south and exits over the Atlantic as we get into Saturday. And then Sunday, here comes this frontal boundary, bringing cooler and drier air and a chance for some showers and maybe a few thunderstorms Sunday into Monday. And then we're going to set up this kind of pattern where we're going to be continuing to deepen this trough across the central U.S. So these waves will take an increasingly southerly track before kind of swinging back off to the northeast. So this is what we get, these big areas of low pressure kind of riding the Canadian prairie and then lifting across the northeast, doing something like that. So it could be active, kind of a cool and rainy pattern as we transition out of September into October across the northeast. And again, here's the total precipitation forecast for the next 7 days. A good chance for about a half an inch to an inch of rain here in spotty areas across the northeast, perhaps even some local areas picking up 1.5 to 2 inches of rainfall as we get into the end of the coming week. We're also looking now at the probability of picking up a half an inch of rainfall between now and October 5th. It's the next 15 days that we're looking at here. And again, a couple areas where you can find that: the Pacific Northwest, the Northeast, where we get the troughs digging, and then across the Gulf Coast, the southeastern U.S. with our tropical impacts. Looking very dry across the western U.S. into the Corn Belt, but again, the Pacific Northwest, the Northeast, and the South, these are the regions where we could pick up some measurable precipitation over the next 2 weeks. Let's look at the high temperatures then as we transition into the weekend. Again, 80s and 90s across the northern plains. Cooler as you head across the southern U.S. into the northeast. We will slowly start to warm up across the northeast as we head into the weekend, with 70s becoming much more widespread as we head into Saturday and Sunday.